Kelly from Appalachian Memory Keepers, and several years ago we filmed an interview with Charity Gambill, an incredible, inspiring lady from Alleghany County, North Carolina. We filmed the interview for a larger project we were working for at the time, but we have decided that the full interview is so good that for the first time ever we want to release it so that you can see everything she has to say. Charity had so many great stories to tell that we've actually broken the original interview up into 2 parts. Today we're going to show you part 1, and next week we'll show you part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and click on the notification bell so you get a notice when we do release the video. For everybody at Appalachian Memory Keepers, thank you for your support.
Your dad was a tenant farmer.
Yes.
So tell us about what that was like.
Well, him being a tenant farmer, he actually worked for the Edwards family, who Mr. Dillon's great-grandfather owned my great-grandfather as a slave. So we were actually had properties that joined because my dad had inherited the property where my great-great-grandpa owned, and that was given to him by his slave owner. And living on my father being a tenant farmer, we did all the things that was necessary to help Mr. Edwards on his farm. We hoed corn, we had cane, we raised cane. They had hogs, and we had hogs and cattle, chickens, raised our own, we had our own eggs and milk, and just all the things that we have to go to the store now and buy. We used to raise there, especially our meats, and we had always had a garden, so we had plenty of vegetables. And actually the only thing we had to go to the store and buy was flour. Of course, a lot of times our cornmeal came from, you could ground the corn and make your meal. So we bought, salt, sugar, staples that we didn't raise, but it was wonderful. I mean, we didn't know anything. We had one day a week was our leisure day, and most time on a Monday, especially when the weather was warm, spring of the year and summertime, we'd go fishing. We lived close to a little river, and we would go cut poles from the woods and get our neighbor had some kind of string line that we'd put on a wooden pole, and we'd head to the river and stay all day on a Monday fishing. And that was really, really a joy. I mean, it was an outing. It's something the family did together, except for my dad. He would be working, but Mom would go with us. I'll go to the river, and it was just, those are some of the great memories I had as a child growing up and doing family things. We didn't have a whole lot of, there wasn't any such thing as an amusement park or anything to go to. We were amused when we'd go to the river and get to walk across the swinging bridge that I was scared to death of. But those are the things we did. And
So leisure day, and it was on a Monday.
On a Monday, yes. First thing they would do they'd get their washing done and hang it on the line, and because Tuesday was iron day. That was the day they used to. And we didn't have electric irons. Back when I was growing up, I tell you, we didn't have electricity, and we did until, I think it's about 1947, we got electricity to our house. And they would go to the spring house. You had a big old black pot that you heated the water in, and you had big washing tubs. You had a washboard, and that's how Mama used to wash clothes for 7 children, hang them on the line, and of course we didn't have that many clothes back then. You had a change of clothes. We'd wear. I told my kids we didn't know what it was to change clothes twice a day. We was lucky to be able to change twice a week, because you wore Monday and Tuesday the same thing to school. Wednesday you had your other outfit, two different you'd wear a couple of days, and Friday you may be able to wear something different, or if you didn't, you'd go back to what you wore on Monday, because and as far as shoes, we had what was necessary. Come 1st of May, you started going barefooted, and you went barefooted until Labor Day. And Daddy seen that we had shoes on our feet then, and I think that's the reason I hate to go barefooted now. It's because I cannot stand for my feet to be on the touch of ground. I just like to have something on the bottom of my feet. But like I say, we was very, very poor, but we didn't know it. I mean, you would thought we had a lot of love, and riches never bothered us. We just felt like we had everything we needed, and we did.
I think that's a recurring theme we've heard anyway, and especially I think in Alleghany County, is that everybody was kind of in the same boat, and there wasn't the huge strata, the huge differences between a lot of folks, and
everybody was poor. That's what everybody
Yeah,
told us. Everybody
yeah,
was the same. I mean,
yeah. No,
you grew your own food. You grew what you ate. And
no,
nobody
you
had
did.
electricity. And nobody had folding door plumbing. And
No, we didn't.
but you didn't care because
No.
you didn't know any different.
No, and I told my kids, they were all so spoiled. I said, the only running water we ever had was when we'd wait till dark to go to the spring, and Daddy'd make us run with a bucket to the spring and run back. And they thought that was funny, but that's just the way it was. That was our way of life. And if we played around during the day and Daddy not at home, and we didn't have our buckets full of water, he'd come home at dark, and he knew we were scared. That you had to go to that spring. And a lot of times me and my sister, we'd run, and we'd have to get back to the house with a half a bucket of water, and he'd make us go back. But those were, back then, I'd say the good old days. People say what they want to, but.
We got to ask home remedies. We've been asking everybody home remedies. How did
Oh,
your
my
grandma
gosh.
adopt you? And we've heard some things I've never in my life heard.
Lord,
We're
have
learning.
mercy.
We want to hear what when you got sick.
Oh,
how did
my
you get
God. You don't want to know.
I do. We do want to know. I don't know if you can tell some of the things we've heard, but maybe.
Well, I don't know. There was something, Mama, if we had a cold, they would mix Vicks with onion and all this mess and put it on your chest. And honest to goodness, my mom would swear by it. It would break a cold up. And some of the things that we used to have to take come wintertime, castor oil and a little touch of turpentine. And it worked for several different things, I guess. You want to be cleaned out, you took that castor oil, and I mean, she would actually pinch our nose to make us swallow it because it was awful.
well, if it's burning, that means it's working.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's burning,
And
something's
That's a
going on.
quote from Judge Gowdy.
and a lot of times we'd be running and playing, and like I said back then, summertime when you went barefooted the whole time, and we had a lot of broken glass in some of the areas that we'd get real bad cuts. First thing I had to do, get sand or something and pile in that cut and stop that bleeding. And now, people, Lord have mercy, that would be one of the worst things in the world you could do. I've had snuff and tobacco put on bee stings. They were things that would work today, I guess, if you had to use them, because I know my husband said something, he's allergic to bees, and I said, well, I'll just get some tobacco and keep it here for like chiggers be out in the berry fields. We'd get chiggers, and Daddy told us if we'd put a onion in our pocket, chiggers wouldn't bother us. And he said, also, if you kept an onion in your pocket, uh, black snakes or snakes they would flee. They wouldn't stay in the area because we used to pick a lot of blackberries and stuff in the summertime. But a lot of the home remedies that they used to use for, say, ground ivory tea and catnip tea for babies if they had colic or croup or something, we used that a lot. And I know Mama used it all the time, and even with my kids growing up, with us living with her, she used some of them home remedies that some of the doctors, the modern day doctors, said would kill you, but some of the old country doctors that used to make house calls, now they thought that was it. I mean, a lot of the home remedies work better than anything they could give you. That's what they'd tell you.
Tell us about the mail truck / bus.
Yeah, well,
Tell us about that again.
of course, we wasn't back then. We wasn't allowed to ride the bus with the white children, so they had a mail truck. Paul Krause drove it. His son Guy still lives here in the county, and he's got a daughter. I don't know where. Well, he had 2 daughters, but anyway, he would pick us up in the morning and take us to school. And one of his sons, who is dead now, used to tell a story. We'd be in restaurants together, and he said, Charity, he said, I want you to tell everybody how we went to different schools together, because he would be in the mail truck with his dad. And he said, we went to different schools together. And he would go with his dad to drop us off at Cherry Lane, and then he'd come on to Sparta School. But we did that for a number of years for our morning transportation. But in the afternoon, they had a little old bus that looked like a van, and it took us home in the afternoons until, I guess, near the late 40s, probably 48 or 49, a bus started picking us up in the morning and taking us to school. The same little bus that, because we lived way out in a remote area, that it just wasn't cost effective for them to send that bus down there every morning to pick us up, take us to school. And I don't know, I'd say they probably reimbursed Mr. Krause a little bit, and he was glad to do it.
You know, I hear you when you say that, and I think we can all testify to what it was like when we were growing up, and not really don't get that perspective of why was this going on, or you just kind of accept that this is, so when did that kind of dawn on you that, this is, or that it wasn't really the way it should have been? I mean, when did that, or did you have that perception at that time?
Well, it really didn't dawn on me even till we was having to be rides far to North Wilkesboro. And I just really felt, to begin with, we enjoyed it simply because we was around so many other black kids that, because we sort of, where I grew up in the neighborhood in the Vox community, there was no black families. The closest black family was 2 miles from us. And we grew up with white kids. We were like family, because we were just back and forth to each other's house. We played together, and it was just our way of life. But then, after being bused to North Wilkesboro and knowing we had a school right here, I always said, when I started raising my family, I'll move away before I let my kids have to be bused to another city to go to school. And bless Pat, when my daughter was born, that she was blessed to be able to start school and Sparta school system, not have to be sent to a black school, totally black, the little school that was built for us. And we had no incidents whatsoever. It was just like they were supposed to be there all the time. And I know a lot of people had some real ill feelings about it. We didn't, because like I said, that's the way things were back then. And my biggest problem was the fact that being bused in North Wilkesboro, I was felt it was a hardship on my dad to try to keep us all in school, because he had 4 of us in high school, going to high school over there. And I quit school to go to work. And my sister did too. Both of us dropped out of school and worked in private homes. We were making $3 a day, I think, back then. But we, like I say, we was exposed to hard work. We didn't mind going to the cornfield and hoeing corn all day or doing whatever needed to be done.
I can see how, with kids of our own and kids who question, my boys are full of questions, and I've got twin 17-year-old boys.
Oh.
They may not live to 18. But in your mind, you've like, okay, so I play with these kids. We go to the river together. We do all these, and yet I have to go here and they go there, and it's like that doesn't work. Why is that? And really questioning that.
Yeah, well, our friends. I don't know if you probably other interviews heard of Minnie Lou Irwin. It was her father is the one that my dad was a tenant farmer for, and we grew up with them, and they didn't understand why we could not get on the bus with them in the morning, why we had to get on the mail truck to go to school. And we'd leave them a lot of mornings crying, because here they was able to get on that bus, and here we was having to pile up in that little mail car to go to school. And it was, and we laughed about it after we got grown, to how, we even questioned it back then, but we thought, that's just the way it's got to be. We got to go to our school, and they got to go to theirs.
Tell us about your dad. What do you remember about your dad?
Oh, my dad was a
Hard-working
hard-working man, funny, full of life. One funny thing about my dad, back then, like I said, he was a tenant farmer. What I didn't tell you, my dad used to make, not for himself, but he made moonshine for a neighbor who made it back then and sold it. I mean, my daddy went to town one time with carrying two jugs of White Lightning, and the police asked him, said, "Lige, what you got? Your water?" And he said, "No, I got liquor," and just kept walking. But he was taking it to a local banker, so they knew what he was doing. But Dad was if he decided he wanted to drink himself, then he got out of very unruly. But he was one of the hardest working men that you would ever want to see. Didn't mind hard work, instilled it in us kids, and he always told us, he said, I may do a lot of things, but I'll tell you one thing, don't ever take anything that don't belong to you. He said, if it ain't worth asking for, it's not worth having. And he said, I will not tolerate that. So he was very firm. I was his pet. I have to admit, I can't ever remember my dad spanking me. Never. But my mama did. She made up for it. But he was quite, everybody that knew his name was Elijah, but everybody called him Lige. Everybody that knew Lige Carter loved him and knew he was a hard-working man. Hard-working man. Big, tall, all of us kids. My mother was 5'2", and Dad had to be 6'4" or 5", and all of us kids took back after him working
What
there.
about your mother? Tell us about your mother.
Oh, Lord, she was a jewel.
What was her name?
Treva, Maddie Treva. That she was worked hard all of her life. I mean, she would stack hay. I know Mr. Dillon would tell Daddy, he said, Treva's a whole lot better stacker than you are. She'd climb up on them haystacks. That's back when they didn't bale hay, they stacked it. And she'd get out there and work all day, as little as she was, but she was strong as an ox. And she worked private homes. She used to take in ironings and do a lot of things to try to help us with have clothes to wear. And she used to sew. She would make, my sister and I, we would, Daddy'd buy feed, and they'd have floured sacks. And we got to choose the sack that the feed come in, because Mama's going to make us a dress out of it. And she did she could do on an old pedal sewing machine. She sat up there and pedal away and make us, she made us, we thought, beautiful clothes back then. I mean, it was beautiful. But she worked hard. She was a hard worker, even when she went to work in private homes. And a lot of folks was good to, they gave her clothes for us kids when we got on up, sort of wanting stuff we saw other people with. And a lot of their neighbors or her friends would give her clothes for us kids. And it was, it may have been old to them, but it was new to us, so we were tickled to death to have it. And she, like I said, she was a little woman, but she was a strong Christian woman. She very active until she got real sick last 2 years, about in 2005, because she died in 2007. But she is 88 years old, and she always said, you know, I don't want to lay and suffer and be a burden to nobody. And I guess she was, the last 2 or 3 months of her life, she was just, you know, not able to do for herself. And she went to Winston-Salem and lived with my sister for the last year of her life. But she would come home. She would be so excited. She loved to go to the senior center and be around. She'd say, go out there, be around the old folks. And, you know, but she was delightful. Smart, hardworking woman.
What was faith? What was your religious life, and what was that like here in Alleghany County?
Oh, well, we were raised Baptist, and we've always had the church out here where you come in. That's the church I belong to, and that's sort of where our family grew up, in that church. It was a little frame church at the time. It's been remodeled several times, but and we didn't get to go to church very often. To tell you the truth, my dad back in the day did not have a car, but we called it homecomings or communions, we would go to, he would get one of the neighbors and he'd load us all up, and we'd come to church and stay all day, because they had to have dinner on the ground. We called dinner on the ground. Of course, they had tables. But we were brought up in the Baptist faith and have stayed true. All of us, all the kids were joined the church and stayed committed. And of course, I'm still real involved with church work. I teach Sunday school, missionary in a missionary society, do a lot of work in our association. We at one time had 13 churches. Now there's 11 in our association. So
any significant memories of things that happened at church or related kind of?
Well, yes. Back when I was growing up, and they used to have altar calls, and you went to what they called then mourners' benches. You went up and you either got on your knees or you sat in a chair, and they would sing and pray and shout and until you made your confession. Now it's they seem to have made it so easy. They said, give God your heart and give me your hand. That's the way they'll receive them in the church. And I told myself, well, when I grew up, you didn't do that. You stayed at that mourner's bench if it took you a week or however how long it took. And you wasn't baptized in a inside pool. You went to the river or creek. Well, it was a pond we was baptized in. And I'll never forget it because it was in November. There was mush ice froze alongside of the creek. And there was about 17 or 18 of us baptized. And my dad, he claimed he wanted to test that water before his young'uns went in it. And he had him a few drinks that morning. And he come out of the water and he said, I tell you, if you all ain't got some kind of damn religion, or one of you going to end up with pneumonia. Embarrassed us to death. But he was just as dead serious as he could be about it. And we laughed about it after it was all over with, but he said he didn't want to tell him. He said, that mush ice around that creek, he questioned whether his kids should be going in there or not. But
that was the test, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was.
You were mortified.
Oh, we were embarrassed, but everybody else thought it was funny. We didn't think it was funny at the time, but then after we thought about it, it was funny. He was. But when we come out of the water, he had our towels. Him and Mama had towels ready to wrap around us. But that was, of course, now they have. We still baptize in open stream. We don't have pools inside our churches.
Tell me about, how many years, 16 years on the school board?
Yes.
And you dropped out of high school at 10th grade.
Yeah.
Tell me about how all that comes about. How does that come about that you serve on the school board, but what obviously you've got that drive to and you know how important education is. How did that all come about?
Well, it's a simple story. John Woodruff, who was at that time superintendent of schools, and I was on the board of directors for Blue Ridge Electric, and that's another story. But John told me, he said, Charity, why don't you run for Board of Education? I said, John, there's no way in the world I can get elected to the board. I'm a high school dropout. He said, Charity, just think of all the things you've done in this county and the contribution and the message that you've got. And I thought about it, and I said, no, I'm not interested. He said, I think it's only cost you like $5 to sign up to run. And after he stayed on to me, and then I had a lot of other people that encouraged me, said, I'll support you and all this stuff. And actually, I was shocked when I ran because a lot of the blacks in the county told me, Charity, you're crazy, you'll be embarrassed and all this stuff, and really discouraged me for a short period of time. But, when I ran, the only thing I told them, I said, the only thing I can promise you is I'll be as fair and honest as I know how to be. And I'll be the voice of the people, but when it comes to a vote, I'll only have one vote if I'm elected. So the first time I ran for the office, for a seat on the board, I led the ticket the first first 4-year term. And after that, I ran for re-election I was elected 4-year terms, so I served 16 years. And my kids at that time, they said, Mama, you have done enough. You've been basically a public servant all your life. You need to get out and do some things for yourself. And I said, well, I really hate to get off the Board of Education, but, I realize it's time. And so somebody said, why don't you run for county commissioner? I said, there's no way in the world a woman will ever be elected to that seat. I just don't think I can do it. And they said, oh, you've been on the Board of Education for 16 years. It'd be a piece of cake, I said. I thought, oh, Lord. I said, okay, my kids wants me out of politics anyway, so I'll run. And when I get beat, that'll be it. So I ran, made it through the primary, and I thought, oh, my gosh. And then that fall election, I won a seat, 4-year term on the Board of County Commissioners. And I was actually the first African American who run for any public office in the county. And I didn't, I was a little hesitant to begin with, but I said, who can better promote education than someone who basically feels like they were deprived? I mean, through high school, at least get a high school diploma, and if at all possible, go to a 2-year school, 2-year technical school, or 4-year college. And that's what I instilled in my kids. I couldn't afford to send them to college, but I had 3 in college at the same time. And I was inspired by the fact that I told them no matter what it takes, if I have to borrow the money, if I have to walk, if y'all want to go into college, that's what I want you to do. And I had 3. My son, my 2 daughters were all in college at the same time. And my youngest daughter was in high school the year that my oldest daughter graduated from college. So I was blessed, and they were blessed to get scholarships, financial aid, and then I borrowed money. I borrowed from the bank, and everybody knew me. And I told them, I said, if it takes me the rest of my life to pay it back, I want them kids to, if they want to go, I want them to have an education. So it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had, is to serve in a position that not even I thought I'd be able to. And to contribute. I really feel like I made a contribution to the county. And some ask me time after time, why do you keep running? And, I said, Alleghany means so much to me. And I think one should grow where they've been rooted. And I said, Alleghany County, all my siblings left. I don't even expect my kids to come back to Alleghany, because they're really job opportunities, if they had any type of degree other than education, was very scarce. So that experience to me was one of the greatest eye-openers that I've ever had, is being able to serve in a position where I felt like I was basically deprived of being able to continue my education, but to see the things that I could be a spokesperson for and speak from self-experience.
What's your message? You talked about that before. You said something about what your message is.
My message is that to have a friend, you got to be one. To grow where you're planted, not to turn your back on, I don't have it. I don't have a lot of material things, but I have a lot of love for nature. I have a lot of love for what I can do with the land, the stuff that God has given to me. I mean, you know, how much freedom can anybody want other than being out here in the country and having in the outdoors? And I have 2 gardens plowed out back to that I'm looking forward to planting. You saw all that stuff I've got out there. And my message to people, if you want to have a long life, first live your life to the fullest. Live it for our supreme being, our Lord and Savior. Don't ever forget that that's the one road map. If we follow, it leads to our heavenly home. And I tell them at Sunday school, there's not a whole lot that I can tell you that you can't read for yourself. I can study and help to explain these things to you. But my message to my family, my friends, is to live where you're planted. Be a blessing to somebody every day. I mean, if you don't do anything but pick up the phone and call somebody just to say, how you doing today? You'll very seldom find me when I'm not smiling or my mouth's not open. I'm running my mouth about something because, like I say, I'm a people person, and I feel like that that's my calling, is to be involved in the community, doing what I can to serve my fellow man.